Welcome to the Painted History Museum, and Happy New Year. It's January 1, 2024. We have an incredible video that we shot a couple of days ago, and a little background on it. Sue Ade, who is a lifelong resident of Pana, and she's a retired school teacher and a published author. She contacted the Painted History Museum a while back, and she said, "Mike, I have an incredible story that I would like for you to video." And I said, "Sure, tell me about it." And she said, "It's a story of a lady that lives in Pana. Her name is Irena Golcvegaite. She was a Lithuanian refugee." And I said, "Well, that's interesting. Tell me a little more." And she said, "Well, in 1940, the Soviets invaded Lithuania. So the people had to evacuate the country, and they went to Germany, to Hamburg, Germany, just at the beginning of World War II. So they were kind of caught up between communism and fascism, without a country, hungry, nowhere to go. Her father was forced labor in a bomb factory in Hamburg. Just about that time, by 1943, they were caught up in the Operation Gomorrah bombing of Hamburg. The Allies needed to bomb the bomb-making factories of Germany, and when they did, it was 10 days of constant bombing and incendiary and carpet bombs, and it was just a terrible thing. Thousands of people were killed, and her family survived it, and she has stories of it. Even after the war, they were 6 years in a concentration camp because they had nowhere to live. They were hungry. They had to forage for food. Her story is just an incredible story, and I would suggest, after you see this video, if you want more information about what she and other Lithuanians actually went through, I would look up the Soviet invasion of Lithuania, and then also look up Operation Gomorrah, 1943, and you'll see the incredible story of what this woman went through. But with no further ado, here's our interview performed by Sue Ade with Irena. Enjoy. Welcome to the Painted History Museum. It's December 28th, 2023. And we have a couple of honored guests that are going to tell their story. One is Sue Ade, who's a retired school teacher and a published author that is writing the life story of Irena Golcvegaite. Welcome to the Painted History Museum. We're so glad that you agreed to tell your story. Thank you very much. And what I'm going to do is just have Sue and Irene talk. They know each other's story pretty well, so please go right ahead.
Well, I've always known Irene since she lived in Pana, and our book club was reading a story about Lithuania, and I knew she was from Lithuania, so I invited her to talk at our book club. And when she told her story, the words just gushed out, and she had held it in for so long because she thought no one cared. And we all cared. We cared so much that I had to write her book. But it took me 6 months to convince her to let me write her book and tell her story. So she was living in Lithuania and had a very peaceful life until the Soviets invaded in 1940. So I'm going to start telling about Lithuania and what your mother and dad did first.
Well, my mom, she didn't work. She had me and my sister, both of us. and my dad worked in, I think it was a candy factory. Because I remember him saying, walking in the room, and there was a big rat there, and he took a pick that he had, and the rat was jumping on him, and he killed the rat with the pick. That's when he told us this story when he came home. But my mom, we had an apartment, we rented a house, I think, and my mom was home taking care of us, and then when the laundry had to be done, she took it in a basket, and we walked to the lake or the river, whatever was close, and I remember my mom washing the clothes and hitting him, whatever she was washing on a rock. And my sister and I, we were just playing around. And then she would carry all the laundry home and put it on a line. And it was a regular, and nothing exciting till the Russians start coming in. And then everybody was running. Everybody's in all directions. The people were running, and it was bad. And my dad, he was Lutheran. So according to Lithuanian people, they always fought about their religion over there, Catholic, Lutheran. And when you were Lutheran, you were considered a German. So we figured, well, we're going to run to Germany. So there were trains waiting for the people, and the people were just running in the trains. We sat down on the floor. They were packed, the people leaving Lithuania. We grabbed just a couple of things that we had, clothes, and that was all. We left everything behind, and we ran We ran and got on the train. And we went to Germany. And when we got to Germany, they were, soldiers all over, and they were directing the people where we were supposed to go. And we went into a project. They were like projects, like over here. And we were assigned to go on the second floor, because they were one more room, I think, on the second floor, and that's where we wound up. And during the whole war, we lived there. We couldn't really go anyplace because the bombs were falling and the sirens were going, and you can't leave because you don't know where you're going to be when you're supposed to be inside. So that's how we lived. We had no food, hardly any food at all. Am I saying it right?
Yes.
And everything was rationed. Then the SS came and took my dad and took all the men, and they took all the boys that were, I think, around 14 or 16 years old. They took all the boys, but they left the girls. And they took the boys away from their parents and trained them. The SS trained the boys to shoot and to kill. And the parents, when the boys came back after the war, some of them, and during the war, when they came home, the parents were afraid of their children, because if they would say a bad thing about them or about Hitler, they were allowed to shoot your mother and father and all your siblings. that were against Hitler. So you had to watch what you're saying, and you had to warn, the parents had to warn their children to be quiet, not to say anything, and that's how we lived through the war.
Now, when
And-
they took your father away, what kind of occupation did they make him do then?
They took him away, they took all the men away, and they put him in the factory where they make the bombs. And that's where they worked. All through the war, the men had to work in the factories where the bombs were made.
And if he didn't work, then he wouldn't get the rations.
He wouldn't get the rations, and you don't say no. If you say you're not going to work, they'll just shoot you, just like that. And that's how a lot of people got shot. You don't say no. When an S person comes, they were always in two. They were patrolling down the streets, two on one side, two on another side. Then they turn around and come back. And we were afraid to go outside. If they don't like you or whatever, they have the right to kill you. So everybody stayed as much as they could in their apartments. You didn't see any people outside. You didn't see any children outside.
Now, there was one child that you met that was sick.
Yes,
You want to tell about that?
yeah. The mother wanted to go to the store, and she came by us. It was right across the street, and it was on the first floor. And she asked my sister and me if we could go over and watch her till she comes back from. She had to go to the girl had TB, and she had to open the shade of the window. But then when we got there, she closed the shade, and she says, "While you're here, leave the shade closed till I come back." And when she came back, we stayed with that little girl till she came back. But before we got there across the street, the mother left, and we walked in, and the girl had the shade up. And we said, "Your mom said to leave the shade down." And she said, "But there was a lady that was dressed all in white, and she was looking at me through the window. And that's why I put the shade up." And when her mother came and the shade was up, and her mother said, I told you to leave the shade down. And she told her mother what happened. And we left, and the little girl, she died the next day. She was dead. So it was like an angel looking at her. And she had to get up and open the shades so she can see her. So, and then there was another family, couple of doors down. She was in a wheelchair, and her husband used to, every time the sirens would ring, he would carry her, even if they ring, they ring real fast when we have to go, but they kind of rang not that fast. You have to go in the basement. You cannot, the lights have to be out, and you have to go in the basement. If they find you in your apartment, they'll kill you. So everybody runs in their basements. So one time, the sirens were ringing, and her husband would carry her down from the second floor all the way in the basement. And one day, when the sirens were really loud and the bombs were falling and fire all over the place, she says, "I'm not going." I'm not going, let him kill me, I'm not going. And he left her.
Yeah.
So, and then when the alarm would go, you slept with your clothes, you never undressed at night. And you slept with your clothes, and when the alarms rang and you had to run, so we ran into, there was a bunker, but it was like, oh my God, like a block, the end of the street, and it was all concrete, no steps, just you had to run down, and inside was all concrete. And when the sirens would ring, middle of the night, there were no men. The women would run with their small children, and the bombs would fall, and the fire, and everybody screaming, every stepping on one another, hitting one another, trying to run as fast as they could. So there were so many children that were hurt, bleeding. The women were bleeding. Some didn't even have any shoes on, half clothes, just whatever they can grab. And when you get out of the bunker, when the sirens are, stopped, and you run home and you see all that blood and all the small children crying for their daddies, some get lost from their mommies, they're crying. It used to be a terrible, terrible thing to see. And it was going on practically every night.
Yeah, you did have some happier times when your mother was pregnant and was going to have another child. So
Yeah.
you want to tell about that?
Yeah, my mom got pregnant, and in the middle of the war, and there was a convent that wasn't too far. So they took my mom to the convent to have the baby. And my mother was in the convent, but we couldn't go, we had to stay. And she had the baby in the convent. And it was my sister that was born. And the nuns gave her a name. It was the day was Elizabeth. And that's how my sisters got her name. The nuns baptized my sister and they gave her the name Elizabeth. So that was in the convent.
And then you and your sister also went to a school.
Yes, when they put us in the what is it? What did I say? Projects.
Yes.
In the projects, we had to go to a school. There was a school, and my parents took us, my sister and me, to the school, and there weren't that many children in the school, and there was a teacher, and we got introduced. And I think we went to that school maybe a couple of times when they bombed it. But when you go in that school, you have to stand up and you have to raise your hand and you got to say, "Hi, Hitler." And there was a painting on the wall. When you come in through the front door, there was a big painting of Hitler. And you used to look at that painting and raise your hand and say, "Hitler, Hi Hitler." And we all had to do that. And then a couple of days, every day we had to do that. And when we left the school, we had to, do that. And then a couple of days while we were learning whatever there was, the teacher said, now one at a time, she said, you have to spell Hitler. If you spell Hitler, I'll pass you. If you don't spell him, then we don't pass you. That's what we learned. It was all about Hitler.
And do you want to tell the times that you actually saw Hitler?
Oh yeah. That was, we were in the projects, and the SS was running down the street and saying that Hitler is coming, because we had the factory where they made the bombs. So Hitler came like once a month maybe, I don't know how often. And we were told that Hitler is coming, and we had to go and stand on the sidewalk, line up. And we couldn't have anything in our hands. We could have no purse, nothing. And we would be lined up as far as I can see on both sides of the street. And Hitler would be coming, and he would have the SS men. Before, he had a convertible, and I don't know how many SS were going in front of the car, and the SS were on this side, and in the back. And he was riding in the car, and we couldn't do nothing but say hi. Everybody had to raise and say hi, Hitler. He looked terrible. He had those mustache, and his hair was like, I think on the left side, it was like oily and just like pasted on his head. Black hair and that black mustache. So I seen Hitler, I think about 3 or 4 times. And when he left, oh my God, it was a big thing when he was coming, a big thing. And everybody listened, because they knew if you say, go against it or say something, you get killed.
Yeah, in 1943 was what they called Operation Gomorrah. And the Allies decided to test to see whether or not they could win the war by aerial bombing. So they picked Hamburg because of, you said, all the factories were there. But they also decided if they killed the factory workers, then there wouldn't be anyone to go. So they had carpet bombing, and they started in July, and for 10 straight days and nights, they bombed Hamburg. It was very dry, and it started off this fireball. Yeah, and that's what, when you were talking before about running back and forth at night, that was like Operation Gomorrah, because you said sometimes you had to go 2 or 3
times a night.
Yeah.
Yeah. We would come home and the sirens started all over again. Here we go running again. And that's what I said, we slept, we couldn't undress, because sometimes we ran 3-4 times during the night. And then one time, I think we used to walk to the woods, my dad. He would take my sister and me, and we would take a bucket, and we would go pick blueberries, whatever, mushrooms. We lived on mushrooms. My mom would make a gravy and boil the mushrooms and put on potatoes. Beans and mushrooms. We practically lived on. But we had to go to the concentration camp to go to the woods. And the concentration camp had a cyclone fence, and it had, like this, that you're not supposed to, when you go, and you gotta go and look straight. You can't turn your head and look at the people that are in the concentration camp.
So signs said for both not.
Yeah, not to look. And so we didn't look. Couple of times we went there and we just couldn't look at the people that were, it was all men in that concentration camp. They were hanging on the cyclone fence, just skeletons. And you can see when you're walking, you don't have to look, but you can see the people hanging on the fences. And one time my dad was a smoker, and he took the cigarette and he went like that. And the SS guy grabbed him by the neck, and he says, "Do you see the sign? Next time you look, you'll be dead." Or throw the cigarette. So we were afraid to go that way. We wouldn't go that way anymore. But then, too, they bring in a pot like this big, maybe bigger, round iron pot of soup. And the people in the concentration camp are waiting with those little cups. And the guy has a ladle and he's giving in the people the soup. And whatever is left, he'll go like that and spill it on the floor instead of giving it to the people. And they were starving. Just spill it on the floor. The whole kettle.
Now, after the Operation Gomorrah, the conditions were so bad that your sister got sick.
My sister got sick. My sister got diphtheria. And at that time, there was no cure for diphtheria. Her mouth was over here. Her whole face was disformed. And the doctors told my mom and dad that there is nothing they can do. There were so many people that died of diphtheria at that time that the doctor said there is no hope. She can go any day. Make arrangements to bury her. So my mother's screaming, crying. We're all crying. We come home. My mother took I think it was a bed sheet, and she ripped it apart, and we sitting on the floor, and my mother sitting in a chair, and my mother was a good seamstress. She didn't have a machine or nothing, but she did by hand. She used to make clothes for us, and she's sewing the dress to bury my sister in. And we're all crying. And then she didn't even finish the dress. In a couple of days, I think, we went back. I can't remember if we went back. It must have been a couple of days. We walked in the room where my sister was. My sister is standing up, and her face is normal. And we looked and we said, "What happened? What happened?" The doctor says, "A miracle." They said they didn't do nothing different. They just walked in her room and her face was normal. And then we asked my sister what happened. My mother was still crying. We were all crying. We couldn't believe it. And my sister said, there was somebody that came to see me. She was so pretty, she says, and she was dressed all in white. And she said she came and she touched me, and she says for me not to cry, and she says you're not going to go anyplace and you're not going to die till you're 50 years old. You got a long life. So she told her all kinds of little things, I think, and that's my sister told us what happened. And you know, my sister lived till she was 50, and she died. She got cancer, and her husband knew. She told her husband that what happened to her, and I didn't know that her husband knew. And then when my sister got so bad and she was dying, her husband said to me, you know, Irene, all those years I knew that Betty's going to die when she's going to be 50, because she seen an angel, and the angel told her that she's going to die when she's going to be 50. She did. She died when she was 50.
Well, she had all those nuns in the
And
praying for
yeah.
her, because they were her godparents.
Parents,
They were her
yeah.
godparents.
So,
Then, after the war's over, tell about the looting and stuff that happens and what you and your sister Bridget did.
say that again.
You know, after the war's over,
Yeah.
and people are looting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well, yeah, we used to go, my mom would give us a little, sometimes even a pillowcase, and we would go in town, and you know, in Germany, every house has a fence. Not a big fence, but like a 4-foot fence or something. Every house, there's hardly, not too many houses without fences. And they all had fruit trees. And we would go, my sister and I, we would go, and when we looked through the fence, if there are apples or pears laying on the ground, we would ask the people if we could pick them. And some people would say, most of the people say, yeah, go ahead. So we would pick. They had worms, you know, there were the apples that fall on the ground. And we would bring them home, and my mom would clean them, and she would slice them. And then she would give us a needle and thread. And we would put the apple slices on a needle and a thread. Like, make them like this. And then she would hang them up in the sun, so they dry. And then she would make soup, like with the apples. Sometimes she'd make dumplings. I still make chicken soup with the dumplings that she made with like a cold soup with dumplings. And we used to love that soup. We were so hungry we would eat anything. So that's how we got apples. And then we would go to the flea market, am I saying it right?
Well, it's kind of like a city market.
Yeah, where the farmers come, like over here, farmers market, and they sell their produce. Well, they had all kinds of stuff to sell, but we had no money. So we were walking around, and there was a place where they would, if something is spoiled or whatever, they know that they can't sell it, they would throw it in that, whatever they call that, dump things. And we used to go in there and we would pick up all kinds of stuff that was damaged that they couldn't sell. And that's how we went. We got food, and stuff from the stuff that they threw out. And the same with the potatoes. We follow a horse or two horses, and they turn over the potatoes. So we go on our hands and knees. The farmer would come to the project and he would ask who wants to come and work. So we all volunteered. We go to work. They give us a nice lunch, and then I don't know how much money we got, for work, and there's so many hours. So we would go on our hands and knees, and we would have like a bushel, and you pick up the potatoes. And when the bushel is full, they empty it, and that's how you follow the farmer with the horse, and that's how you picked up the potatoes. We did that. And then when we got some potatoes, we would make a fire, and we would roast the potatoes in the fire.
That sounds good.
Oh, and they were so good. We did that. Then we went to pick peas, and we went to pick beans. And the peas we liked the best because we could eat all we wanted while we were picking the peas. We were eating them.
Well, tell about the school after the war, what you and your sister decided to take from the school.
Oh, during the war, when everybody was looting, when the war was over, and everybody was looting, the grocery stores, everything. They were taking the chairs, they were taking the furniture, they were taking everything. And my sister and I, we went to the school that we were in. That was all full of people, and they were grabbing everything. And there was that Hitler picture on the wall. Nobody was touching it. So my sister and I, we took the picture, and we were going home with with Hitler's picture. Nobody wanted it. Nobody said nothing, and we brought the picture home. My dad almost had a heart attack. He took that picture, and he slammed it, and he stepped on it, and he shredded it. And then he didn't know what to do with it. He had to hide it someplace. It's still, something. So I don't know where. I think he buried it. Whatever was left of the picture. That was the Hitler's picture. So what else did I forget?
Well, I think you covered the war years now. So after the war, then tell them that you had no country to return to because the Soviets still are in charge.
Right.
Of
So the Germans didn't know what to do with us. So they decided they killed everybody in the concentration camps. Whatever they didn't kill, we used to, my mom and dad used to look out the window and see the smoke. The smoke, the smoke. And everybody knew what that was. They were burning the Jewish people. And we could smell it. The smoke was so heavy and dark. And I don't know how far we were from where they were burning the people. But I remember the smoke. And my parents closed the windows, and they knew when one part of where we lived, we could see the smoke. So anyway, when all the people in the concentration camps were killed, they fumigated the concentration camps. And they started to put people like us, because they didn't know what to do. So we went into the concentration camps. They had one room, we had the iron beds with a little tin mattress, and they would give us a pillow and a sheet, I think. And wooden floors, and there were lines, you know, and everybody got one room, and you had the bed there, and there was a little corner with a little stove, and the bathrooms were outside. They were those outhouses that we had to go. And then we lived in one concentration camp like that. They had a little store, a grocery store where everything was rationed. So you can go in there every day and just give them the stamps, whatever they were, and get just a few, whatever you needed. And then, now I'm lost.
Well, the first camp you went into was which camp? Tell them.
The camp that had the bathrooms outside, and it had a room where we can go and wash clothes, and the room with the board. And my mom used to. Then we had no soap. We had no soap. We had no toothpaste. We had no toothbrushes. We had nothing. My sisters, both my sisters, my mother and I, we lost all our teeth. We had nothing hardly to eat, and what we had was like my dad said, you feed a cat. You know, we lost all our teeth.
Yeah. You cried at night for a long time.
Time.
And why did you cry?
I couldn't sleep. I ran in my bed, was on the wall. My sisters, they had double. All we had is beds, a little table like that, and a little stove in the corner. I couldn't sleep. Somebody's watching me. I said to my parents, somebody's watching me. I can't sleep. I used to be afraid to go to bed. So my dad, a couple of guys asked a couple of guys if they would come over and take the floor up where my bed is. So the guys came and they took the floor up, and here is a skeleton laying like this, just the skeleton, and like this, and he was watching me. I was right under his head. So they took the skeleton and they took it where our place was. There was the cemetery. We were afraid to go there at night because they buried all the people there, just threw them in the ground. And then when the ground settled, they were holes, you know, where they buried the whole big section of the farm. That's where they buried all the people that were in our camp that they put us in. So we would play there. We would run around, you know, kids. You want to play. We had no toys, we had nothing. Hide and seek was our play. But then at night, nobody's getting out of their apartments, out of their rooms. It seems like that cemetery, people were crying. You could hear people crying all night long, like it was haunted or something, that everybody was afraid to go there at night. So that was our first.
And was your first camp the one that you had walked by to see the man? Is that where you were taken the first time? Or that was at a different camp?
Where I walked.
You know, when your dad walked by and
That was, we were still in the second apartment.
Mhm.
Then that was still, the war was on.
yeah.
When
Did
we
you go
went.
to that camp, you and your family?
Yeah, we went to that camp and they emptied that.
Or
Yeah.
emptied it out? That was
That's
the camp that you
right,
went to, that you had to see
yeah, yeah.
there before.
And then we went, you know, they fumigated one camp. They take so many people can go to this camp, different town. And we were going like from one camp to another camp to another camp. And that's how we lived in Germany till I came to this country, till 1951.
Now tell about the camps that you liked and maybe the Red Cross and some of the things.
Oh yeah, some of the camps the Red Cross would come and they would bring chocolate milk, Kaiser rolls with sardines. Oh my God, we would wait for that. I could have ate 5 of them, I think, but only one. All the children got the Kaiser rolls with the chocolate milk. I can't remember. It was hot chocolate, I think, and the sardine sandwich. We would wait for. Yeah.
And you got clothes from the Red Cross and also shoes. You got a
Oh,
favorite pair
yeah.
of shoes.
They would come. I don't know what camp that was. We went through so many while we were living there. And a truck would come with clothes. You know, like over here, the second-hand stores.
But it's, yeah.
Yeah. And they would bring a whole truck full of clothes. Not wrapped up, nothing, just they asked where to dump the clothes. And they would dump them like in a big room. And the shoes, everything, they would dump and leave. Then the people that were in charge of the camp, well, they locked the door. And you couldn't go in there. They had to go through all of this first. So the people that were in charge went in there first. They picked out everything they wanted. And then they opened the doors and we could go in when there was hardly anything left. I picked up a pair of shoes and they had high heels. So at the camp, there was a guy, he was fixing shoes. I asked him, you know, I can't wear, I was 14, those high heel shoes. He said, I'll cut them for you. So he cut them off for me as much as he could. And they fit me, but I couldn't wear the high heels. And then another pair of shoes, they were red, I think. I looked through and I looked and I looked. I found one and I looked. I couldn't. Then I found one, the same thing, size bigger. One was one size, the other one was the other size. I took them. I used to put something in front and wear them. Nobody knew that they were different size. They were the same shoe, but different size.
Now, was it at the camps where your brother was baptized?
Yeah. That was one camp where we had the chicken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tell about that.
I don't know where we got the chicken from, but we had a chicken. And my mom used to feed it, but the chicken eats by itself. And my mom says, how come that chicken doesn't lay an egg? Where my brother was a baby, you know, no eggs, nothing. Here you got a chicken and no egg. So my mother figured, well, I'm gonna follow the chicken. It's gotta go someplace and lay an egg. So she followed the chicken. Where did it go? Couple of doors down, jumped in to the windows were low, you know. Jumped in their apartment, and my mother's watching. Went in there and laid down, got on the bed and laid an egg. And the woman knew that, well, she walked up to the bed and picked up the egg, and the chicken went out again. So my mother had a big fight, saying, you know, I have a little boy, you know, we got nothing to eat, I'm waiting for an egg for how long? And that darn chicken was laying egg on her bed. So anyway, my brother had to be baptized. And there was, at that time, there was a priest that was going from camp to camp, a Catholic priest. He traveled all over the world. And he came to our camp. And my mother killed that chicken. And he put, you know, she made the chicken, and we had potatoes and green beans. We always had green beans, and I still like them. Anyway, and I don't know what else, whatever she had, she served. Well, we're all sitting at the table, all hungry, looking at that chicken in the middle. Looking at one another, the priest went like this, put it right here, and ate the whole chicken by himself. And we were all watching, hungry. He did. He ate it all by himself. That was the chicken.
Now, tell about meeting your husband to be, Jonah.
Oh, I forgot that.
Yeah. He was a clerk for a Lutheran ministry.
Minister, yeah. He was in another camp, but then so many people came to our camp. And he came. His parents, and he had two brothers and him. They came to our camp. And they got a room in our barracks, called the barracks, on the other side. They had a lot of rooms. There was only rooms, individual rooms. You didn't have a bedroom, or you had one room. The only thing that was missing were the toilets. They were outside the outhouses. But, that's where I met my husband. And then they were taking people, they were asking people where they wanted to go. if you want to go to Canada, Australia, to that other, by Australia, that other city, or the United States. So you can put your name down where you wanted to go. Then you had to wait for a sponsor. You had to have a sponsor to come to this country. So finally, he got the okay to come by himself. And we were kind of dating at that time. He could go by himself. But if he would get married, he can take his wife. So that's how we got married in Germany. And that's how we both came to this country. And we came on a boat. That was terrible. The boat, right before Christmas, the waves were so bad you couldn't get a meal because the ship was going, and so they steamed the eggs, boiled the eggs, but when you opened the egg it was all black because they were steamed, because they couldn't cook anything. So we had sandwiches and boiled eggs.
And what did you bring with you to this country?
I brought one coat. Oh, and then so many people got sick. I had my coat and I hung it, and I was on there were 3 beds. And on top was a little girl. The mother put the little girl on top, thinking that's fun, it's like I was on the second with other people. They put you in a third, and the little girl got sick and she threw up on my coat, and I cried. That's all I had is that coat. So the mother took that coat, and we went, both of us, and she really washed it for me. And she said, don't cry, and for me not to cry. She said, it'll be okay. And she washed that coat for me. But the ship was packed with people. The men were in different section, the women and children were in different section. Everybody was sick. Everybody was throwing up. It was bad. It took us 24 days. It took us quite a while, double the usual time to come to this country.
Okay. So, one of the cooks offered you some kind of fruit that you had never seen. What was it?
Yeah, not an orange, but
A grapefruit.
grapefruit. A grapefruit, and I wanted a lemon. I thought our mouths were so dry, we were thirsty, we were hungry, and I showed him, a small. I couldn't speak English. He was talking to me, but I didn't know what he was saying. But he was a young kid on the ship, and he was in the kitchen. And then he brought me oranges. He brought me a banana. He was so nice. So that's why I never had a banana in Germany. I never seen a banana. And I've never seen a grapefruit or a kiwi. A lot of fruit that's here that we didn't have in Europe.
You were brave to leave your family. You didn't know the language.
Yeah.
To come over to the United States. And you had how much money with you?
$5.
And a
On the train, we went to St. Louis. On the train, they served food, breakfast. And my husband said, oh, they brought the breakfast. And we looked, 2 eggs, and there was toast and milk and orange juice, I think. We looked, holy cow, eggs. We haven't seen an egg, for how long? And my husband says, how much is that gonna cost? I forgot what he says, and my husband had $5. That's all. And he said, that's all we have. And it was a black guy, the waiter on the train. It was a black guy. He didn't take the $5, and we had the breakfast. Give us the breakfast. $5 we had in our pocket.
And then you moved in with your husband's
His
brother.
brother.
And one of the first places they took you into St. Louis was the zoo.
The zoo. The zoo. We spent, I think, 2 days. We went one day, and then we went the next day. Never seen animals. So it was, and then hot dogs. I don't know how many hot dogs I was living on hot dogs. That's all I wanted is a hot dog. Hot dog, hot dog. My husband says, I'm getting tired of hot dogs. But the zoo, never seen animals. We never had, the other thing, there was no school in the camps that we were in. There were no doctors. If it's an emergency, they would take you to the hospital, because I was in a hospital. I almost died. I had a tapeworm, and the tapeworm was killing me. And if we would have stayed in Lithuania, I would have died, because they didn't know. When my mother was making hamburgers, she put an egg in that was in Lithuania. She put an egg in there, and bread, and onion, and I would
Eat it raw.
raw.
Yeah.
And that's where I got the tapeworm. And when we went to Germany, I was dying. Now I'm back.
That's okay.
And my brother went with me to a store, and the lady looked at me and said, what's wrong with your little girl? She don't look good. And my mother told her, and she says, you come with me. I think she took my mother didn't know any language either. And she took me to the doctor. And when the doctor looked at me, he put me in the hospital right away. And I was in a hospital, and they put a tube in my nose. They didn't give me anything to eat, and they put some, I never forget, it was something dark green, put through the tube. They put it in my stomach. And then they gave me a potty. So when I went, at first, nothing. Then I think the second or the third potty, I had to get up because it was going over. And the tapeworm was so big that they put it in the hospital on display in a jar, so the doctors and everybody that comes can see that big tapeworm that was in a little girl like me. It's probably, if that hospital is there, my tapeworm probably is in a jar over there.
Okay. Now, I know when the Soviets invaded Ukraine, it brought back a lot of these memories that you're
Yeah.
talking about today.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why you.
I can't watch it.
Right.
I can't watch the war. I can't watch what's going on now. I just can't watch it because we used to go through that. We used to go through. I seen all of that, and I don't want to see it again.
And that's why you're telling this story too, so that others will know
Yeah,
things like that don't happen.
yeah. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. We were small. We didn't have anything, and that's how we lived. We didn't hardly any clothes. Whatever my mother would get in the pile, she would cut it, or she would take the, she would alter it for us so we could wear it. I didn't know what a pajama was. You asked me. Did you ask me?
Yeah, I think you did what kind of pajamas you had.
I said, a pajama? What's a pajama?
Yeah.
Didn't have it. One coat, 2 dresses, 1 pair of shoes, and just underwear. I think I had two pieces underwear that I washed every evening and hung it up so.
And you brought something else with you when you came to the United States for a friend of.
Oh yeah, the lady that lived in the camp, she had a daughter in the United States that came before we did with her husband, and she was pregnant with the first baby, and her mother asked if we could bring a German baby buggy to the United States. So she bought the buggy, and it was like in a crate, a little crate. It was apart, it wasn't all together, a crate. And we could have a crate when we were coming here. So we put our name on the crate, and we brought it over to this country. Because between my husband and me, we had 1 suitcase. That's all we had. We had nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Tell them what your mother said about you coming to this country.
My mom. I took care of my mom when she got older. She got Alzheimer's. I retired. I worked for 32 years at General Foods. And my husband drove a truck. My sisters was working, their husbands were working. Here is my mom. She worked in a Lithuania restaurant in a kitchen. And when she couldn't work anymore, well, what are we gonna do? So I took her in. I took my mother in, and I retired. Took my mother in, brought my mother here to Pena. I had my mother for 15 years, taking care of my mother, and she didn't even know me. I would get her up in the morning, and I would put her down, and I would comb her hair, and she would say, "Who are you?"
I'm sorry. But you said you wanted to take care of her because she had taken care of you.
Right. I got my mother.
Now, before your mother got sick, though, she said, "How could God bring you to the country?"
Yeah. Yeah, she would sit, and I had a little wheelchair for my mother. She would sit by the sliding door and look out, and she would say, "I don't know how God brought us to this country. I don't know. How lucky. How did God bring?" Always said, "How did God bring us to this country?" till she died.
I think that's a good place to.
We're glad you're here.
Yes,
We're glad you're here.
And we're glad you shared your story with
Yeah.
us. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.